If it feels like I'm drained, if it feels like I don't have enough energy for everything that I have on my plate, maybe it's time to take inventory of what all it is that I have on my plate so I can discover what it is that maybe I can take away or what it is that I can reevaluate as to why I'm doing it, because such is the intentional relationship that we have with ourselves. And that's what we teach here at You Feel That. Hey, you feel that?
You are now tuned into You Feel That with Bryce the Third.
Yo, and welcome to another episode of You Feel That with Bryce the Third, the show where we aim to turn your I can'ts into I got this by providing you with tools and ways of looking at life that empower you emotionally and mentally, no matter what field you are in. I am, of course, your host, Bryce the Third. And today we're going to get straight to it. If you listen to the last episode, like if you listen to these episodes sequentially, you don't have to. But if you did listen to the last episode, I did mention that I'm working on becoming my own notes. So when I came into the studio today, I was like, what am I going to touch on? What are we going to talk about? And then I did some reconnaissance within my own personal experience recently. And I wanted to talk about being intentional about the things that we do in life, being intentional about the different aspects of our life, entrepreneurship, parenthood, dating, like these things all take an amount of intentionality. And the whole thing about intentionality is they require our energy. And so spiritually, I mean, I don't know. I don't know too much of anything. The more that I live, the more access that I have to wisdom through asking questions and then having the experience. But what I've come to understand thus far, and this may change next time you talk to me, is that our energy is infinite. Energy is infinite. Energy cannot be destroyed. And our vessel has a finite amount of energy that it can process. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced like trying to do so many different things and then ending up drained because we're working at the exertion of energy through our vessel, which has a limited ability to process the energy. Like our vessel, the body cannot process all of the energy in existence, right? Or wrong. I don't know. But I'm just speaking on my own personal experience. So when you think about things that take intentionality, like relationships, like interpersonal relationships, like learning how to show up in a relationship, learning how to show up in understanding and compassion, learning how to create a safe space for people to be expressed in. Like this takes a lot of energy. This takes a ton of energy, as a matter of fact. But the beautiful thing about having a desired reality or like a goalpost for where it is that we want to go in life is that when my goal or when my desire is to have quality relationships in my life, then the effort that it takes to be able to cultivate a relationship is not necessarily effort for me, because it is just fulfillment of the goal that I've set for myself, of the life that I'm looking to create. So alignment is a big thing. Also, like, how do we juggle the things that align with who it is that we've declared that we want to be and that we want to create? How do we juggle the energy that's required for all of these things? So thinking about like relationships, like interpersonal relationships, like friends, as well as dating, like intimate relationship cultivation. And I'm a father, and I take like fatherhood is a interpersonal relationship that takes a lot of energy, a lot of seeking direction from my inner intuition, a lot of not necessarily knowing the answers, but doing the best I can and continuing to raise the bar for what the best I can is. And then we think about like entrepreneurship, and you jumping out of the gate and creating these things that you didn't necessarily know would work or not, but you believe they would. Maybe they're things, creativity, they're things that haven't existed except for in your head, and we got to take it from in our head and manifest them into existence, taking steps, like tiny steps, to be able to create these things that we envision in our head. So all of these processes, whether it be dating, whether it be fatherhood, whether it be being a son, whether it be mentorship or creating a business or an organization, like these all take energy. So how do we juggle these things? Like, how do we juggle these things? So I just want to talk a bit about how it is that I've learned how to juggle these things, and I'm still learning how to keep these things afloat. Like, what I've learned is like, okay, so first and foremost is the balancing act, right? So a lot of times people will say, oh, you got to live a balanced life, or you look at, some teachings, it's like, this is how to be balanced. But what I've learned in my experience is that there is no such thing as balance for me. Like, there is the act of balancing. So balance versus the act of balancing. Balance is like, oh, I'm on the beam. I am in alignment. I am exactly there. I'm on point. Where the act of balancing is it has a little bit more compassion and understanding for our process, because there will be times where we feel that we're not on point. And I think that, and I think that the most important thing about the act of balancing in contrast to balancing is that we give ourselves the compassion to allow for us to pivot if we need to. Like, oh, I'm leaned a little bit too much to the right, so let me lean a little bit to the right or to the left, or I'm leaned a little bit to the left, so this is too much, let me lean a little bit to the right. And having that continuous conversation with ourselves, I think, is like one of the most important things that we could do in the midst of creating an intentional life. Having that continuous evolving conversation of what it is that I need. Am I attending to my needs? Am I being sensitive to what it is I may need in this moment? I think is way more important than just being on the beam all the time. And this is not saying that we can't be on the beam. We could definitely be on the beam, but eventually that beam will run out because of the law of impermanence. Like, nothing lasts forever, including inspirations in certain fields. So to allow compassion for our experience, to allow for, if that inspiration was to fade and it's like, okay, well, I'm being more drawn over this way now, allowing ourselves the compassion to go over that way, because that's what the act of balancing is. Let me lean a little bit over that way. And I think the key factor here is that relationship with our inner intuition, which brings us in tune with that inclination. Like, I'm inclined to pivot. So now it's like having a spidey sense of when it is that I'm not doing what it is that I feel that I need to be doing, and really learning how to trust that conversation from within. It tells us that, okay, it's time to pivot. And the ways that I've been able to cultivate a relationship with that voice have varied. I mean, we come here to You Feel That, and I'll throw the journal at you all the time. Like, here goes the journal. Like, sit down, journal, and get intentional about what it is that you are paying attention to in your life. Write it down. When you write things down, it just has a different energy to it. But meditation as well. Like, sitting in meditation and receiving. So, and for me, praying. And praying could just be asking for, like, getting real intentional about what it is that we ask for from life, what it is, what direction we want from life, what type of people we want in our life, what we want our quality of life to look like. That's the praying aspect. And then the meditation aspect is the listening. So it's like praying is asking, meditation is listening. And in that process, like, we'll learn more and more. We'll come closer to our inner voice, our inner wisdom, that inner intuition that allows for us to pull out of the ether, like, oh, like, this is what I need. If I say I want this and I listen and I've been told, or I feel inclined to do this, then maybe, like, I take that action. Maybe I take that action. Maybe the inclination that I pulled out was such in alignment with the question that I asked that maybe that's the answer. And then really just having that experience so many times that allows for us to start to build a relationship with our inner intuition. And a big factor of this is just implementation, like action in the moment, having the ability to go through things, go through circumstances with this process. And we gonna have to go through the process without knowing, and without having that relationship that we desire, and without knowing if we're balanced or not, or without knowing, for us to really come in the tune of what it feels like to know, or like what it feels like when I'm aligned. So back to the topic of, how do you juggle the exertion of energy for this and this and this and this? Really, there is not one answer. There'll be coaches that'll tell you, like, well, this is the answer, and if you subscribe to this, then this is this. And if we have to subscribe to anything that I would teach, it would be to compassion for your personal process. So right now may be the time for you to seek out interpersonal relationship or intimate relationship, and that you have the energy to be able to give to somebody. And not only the somebody, so this is the thing with interpersonal relationship or intimate relationship, like, yes, we are giving energy to people, but also we have to give energy to ourselves, because who are we if we are not 100% completely whole to present ourselves to somebody else? And then we have to give energy to the vehicle, which is the relationship that we're looking to build and flesh out. Like, what do we want it to look like? Like what kind of support do we want to be able to provide? And so like there's like 3 levels of contribution to this one aspect of our lives. The contribution to the person, the contribution to ourselves, and the contribution to the vehicle, of which is the intimate relationship. We have to make sure, one, that these actions are in alignment with what it is that we want. Because say we sat down and really got intentional about where we desire to go, and in that process, like nowhere in there was have an intimate relationship, or grow with another person, or marriage, or relationship, or whatever it is, right? Like that's not even anything that I desire. So if something pops up and it's like I'm not sure, we can refer back to what it is that we set out to do. And it's like, well, if this is not in alignment, then this will be not an effective use of my energy. And this is, I'm not, please don't hear these words and see them as, oh, Bryce is suggesting that I should know off rip what life is and what life should be. And if I come into something that's beautiful and magnificent, I should turn it away because it doesn't align with what I've set out to do. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm the biggest submit to the universe and the process. And maybe you think that things are going to work out a certain type of way, and the universe shows you they're going to work out this way. And to listen to what it is that your universe tells us to do type person that you'll ever meet. So I'm not saying that. And I'm also not saying that interpersonal or intimate relationships are inherently this heavy thing. I don't think that anything has to be heavy. I think that when something is heavy, that is something that requires investigation as well. Because it's like, why is this thing heavy? Why does it feel like I'm pushing this ball uphill? Now, this is not to say that some things aren't worth growing, and growth sometimes can feel as if, if you're lifting weights, like there can be that resistance, and sometimes, it'll feel like that. But I'm also saying, like, if it feels like I'm drained, if it feels like I don't have enough energy for everything that I have on my plate, maybe it's time to take inventory of what all it is that I have on my plate, so I can discover what it is that maybe I can take away, or what it is that I can reevaluate as to why I'm doing it, because such is the intentional relationship that we have with ourselves. And that's what we teach here at You Feel That, how to have a relationship with ourselves that empower us emotionally and mentally, no matter where you come from, what your background is, what your field is. This is what we're here to do. And it's very important to me that you have autonomy in your process. So yes, I'm going to come to the table with my personal experience, with the experience of my friends, and maybe with some things that have worked. And we also have to take into account that one of the most important tools that will always work is that it's work, the work, so something that worked for you in the last season of your life is not going to work for you in the next season of your life, and vice versa. And this is important when it comes to living life intentionally. When we live life intentionally, this is the process. So can we submit to the process continuously and ever evolving? Can we allow it to be so? Because in this season of my life, I might have to just be hardcore into my fatherhood. I might just have to really, because I aim to be an intentional father. And in that intentionality, like, it's not going to happen automatically. And I've learned, like, I do a lot of work that I really care about. And I also am, like, part of my desired reality is to create financial abundance, is to create thriving business. And so those two things can, kind of vie for my attention, because, like, if I wanted to, like, I could work 24/7 every day, because I really love what it is that I do. And my intentional parenting would suffer from me just working 24/7. So I have to also take time to intentionally put my work to the side and intentionally dive into spending time with my kids and having random conversation with my kids, and cultivating understanding where my kids are today, because who my kids are today aren't who they were yesterday, and who they'll be tomorrow aren't necessarily a reflection of who they are today. Like, that's what parenting is. At least for me, that's what intentional parenting is. So the question is, how do we balance having all of these things in our lives intentionally? And for me, it's cool. Like, it's cool to even be having this conversation, because I did not live intentional at all. I don't come from having enough stuff to where it's like, dang, like, how do I balance this and how do I juggle this? Like, I come from just floating and just really not having nothing substantial enough to even care about. I don't even know what I cared about, So one, let's look at it like, this is a beautiful thing to be figuring out like how to do. This is a beautiful conundrum to have on our hands, to have so many things that we're doing intentionally that we have to balance and make decisions and learn to have a conversation with our intuition that points us in the direction of what do I need to prioritize in this moment. And like, that's beautiful. Like, that's beautiful. So, in having compassion for your process and allowing for the moving parts to be the moving parts, also, like, let's take a second and pause and dig into the excitement of the fact that we live this life. Like, this is a wonderful ass life to live, where we have these choices and have these options and have so many things at our fingertips that we can intentionally cultivate in our lives. So the Cliff Notes answer to the question, how do I become intentional about where I put my energy, is to put intentionality behind your intention. Having the willingness to look at what is going on in our lives and knowing that today isn't the same as yesterday, and knowing that seasons change, and giving ourselves the compassion to allow for this process to take place, and be okay if what worked for us yesterday doesn't work for us today, and being okay with allowing for things to change and knowing that things will probably change. Things, impermanence, things definitely will change. And in that process, we'll change, we'll grow. And our capacity to be able to show up for different things in our lives will grow as well. So in super, super short, like, learn to be there for yourself. Learn to be there for you. I can't be there for you. I can show you how to be there for you because I'm there for me. And we can only be what it is that we are to ourselves, to other people. We can only give what it is that we possess. So learning to have this relationship with ourselves is like making the world a better place for real. Like, we build out a better world the more that we build out a better us. So this is like, it's a practice. It takes intentionality. It takes showing up for yourself. It takes having compassion for yourself. And you can fucking do it. You already have all the tools. You already have all the tools. You possess all the tools within yourself. And so, I hope our discussion today, it will help you to really, sit down with yourself and maybe begin to take inventory of what it is that you find important, and what it is that you feel is draining you, and what you feel that you're pushing uphill, and what it is that come easy to you, or what it is that maybe feels like you're pushing, but it's a good push. It's a growth inducing push, and learn how to allow for the important things like that in your life right now, in this moment, in this season of your life. With all that said, I really hope today's episode helped to give you some insight within your own personal process. And if it did, head over to Apple Podcasts if you have an Apple device and leave me a rating and review, especially one of the ones that's like written like a paragraph. If you could do that, oh man, we to the moon with it for real. Like, people see the stars and like the stars, but people really see those reviews. It's like, oh yeah, I really got to tap into this. This is very important that I tap into, because so many people take the time out to write a paragraph or so saying how much they've gotten from this podcast. So if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave, yes, a honest review, but definitely put them words in there. Like, them words make all the difference. My book, The Handbook, a pocket guide for creating your desired reality and being a good human while you're at it, is available for pre-order now. Get your copy. The first 30 copies get a signed copy. And I'm split, hoping that by the time this episode airs that you can get your signed copy as well. But I'm also hoping that they're already gone, because you want to sell your books. You want your books to be everywhere. And by the time this episode airs, I'm really hoping that all 30 of the signed copies have been sold. So go check it out. The link is in the podcast description, wherever you're listening to this podcast at. If you're on YouTube, it's in a video description if you're watching this on YouTube as well. Also in the description will be tickets to my event, Happy New Hill. It'll be January 29th. I'll be there doing book signings. So if you couldn't get one of the 30 books that get signed and you happen to be in Detroit, Michigan, come to Happy New Hill. We're doing a live podcast recording. I'll be doing a keynote speech and some music. We'll have my homegirl, Amaria Grace, coming out for Self-Care Sundays. And it's just going to be freaking great. It's going to be freaking great. It's something that you definitely don't want to miss, especially if you're looking to bring in the new year with a bang. So yeah, come through. The tickets will be in the description below. And also follow me on social media. I've been doing content since I've been doing content. My goal in life is to empower you to be autonomous, to not need me, to not need anything that it is that I teach, or not need any of the products that I create, because you are completely in tune with your intuition and your inner words. So slide over to Instagram and follow me at Bryce the Third. I'm on TikTok as well at Bryce the Third, and come consume some of the content that I'm making to help you create that relationship with yourself. And for our final quote for the day, I'm gonna leave you with a quote from Bryce the Third out of the Handbook. The beauty about becoming familiar about the process of perception is that once we learn how it works, we can switch off autopilot and become intentional about how we see the world. I like that. And in that intentionality comes the gift of having to choose where we put our energy at. So I'm hoping you was able to kind of dig some jewels out of today's episode to figure out how to do that. I will catch you next time on You Feel That with Bryce the Third.